What's up, guys? We are back for another older Mythic Legions review because I just couldn't not take a look at these guys now that I finally have them in my collection. So we're taking a look at the twin demon figures from the original lineup, and I got these secondhand. I don't have the packaging for them, so you're just going to get a shot of these guys right here. We have got AZHAR and ZAZHAR, our yellow and blue demon figures from that original wave. I am dying to do an in-depth look at these guys, so let's get to it and take a look. All right, guys, here they are, our AZHAR and our ZAZHAR figures from Mythic Legions. These are figures that I have been trying to get a hold of for a decent price, quote-unquote decent price, for a while now. These guys are definitely not easy to get a hold of for what I would say smart prices. They are pretty expensive these days for standard Mythic Legion style figures, but they're interesting because I find that a lot of people either really don't care about these figures because they are really different from a lot of other stuff in this line, well, up until Advent of Decay came around, but then a lot of people really love them, and I'm definitely in the camp that loves these figures. I think they are really cool just from a design standpoint. The colors alone really do it for me, and then, I mean, just look at them. They go perfectly together. So they're kind of their own little thing with inside Mythic Legions, but they very much fit the overall kind of world building aesthetic that they're going for here. So we're going to take a look real quick at articulation. We're just going to single one of them out, see how they move around, and then we'll take a look at all their design elements. So we've got ZAZHAR here, and we have a basic standard Mythic Legions figure. We're not going to be surprised in any capacity with this particular set of figures, and they are exactly the same. Obviously, they're very, very similar. So the head's on a ball, he can look up, he can look down, bobble side to side in rotation. Arms go out, they can rotate. We have got a rotating elbow with a single jointed hinge to give you about 90 degrees. We've got rotation at the forearm, the gauntlet, rotation at the wrist, and then we've got a hinge there. The older figures don't have any kind of mid-torso articulation, so we just have the waist, so you can twist, you can bobble side to side, he goes back, and he goes forward a bit. Legs go out, they kick forward, they kick back. We do have a thigh cut up there. You've got a single jointed knee, and then you've got rotation there. We have got rotation, rocker, and hinges down at the hooves on these guys. They don't have feet, they have hooves. So it's all standard Mythic Legion stuff. Nothing missing, nothing extra, you know, kind of standard boilerplate for this line, but you can get them into fantastic poses with what they come with. Now, I say it every time, we don't come here for the articulation, so to speak, at least not entirely. They move around pretty well. But let's face it, these guys are all about the look, the design, the sculpt, and then with these guys in particular, at least for me, it's the paint job. Because these guys, like I mentioned, they are very much their own thing within Mythic Legions. Outside of the fact that now we have the Zarya figure from Advent of Decay, which I've already looked at previously, these guys were unique up until then. So for a couple of years, these were the only demons that were in the line, and they very much work very well together. Now, the backstory behind this figure is, or these figures, is that this is actually one entity that was ripped in two when it was pulled into another plane of existence, basically. So these guys, these demon brothers, are actually one entity that has been ripped in two. So that's why they look the same, that's why they kind of have matching names, AZHAR and ZAZHAR, that kind of stuff. And they very much have a very similar aesthetic here. So we're just going to look at them together at the same time, because a lot of stuff is really similar, but some of it's different. You've got, you know, we've got hooves on these guys, which we've seen quite a few figures with hooves in the line. The Minotaurs, Xylona has hooves. They have the same shin guards. We see this a lot on some of the more evil type of characters, you know, like Rhaegor and stuff like that. They do have different waist guards, though, so we've got kind of the standard Knight's waist guard, and they both have the sashes, but they have sashes that kind of clash with their color scheme, which I really like. So we've got a green that fades to a lighter green with AZHAR, and we've got a red that fades to orange on ZAZHAR, which I think really pops on him more so than AZHAR. And then we've got the corresponding gauntlets that go with the with their waist pieces. So, you know, they have pretty much bare-chested armor at that point. There's nothing left to them. They've got just exposed torsos, and then they've got very minimal armor, kind of like barbarians would have in this line. But that's okay because of the fact that they do have all of this crazy bright coloring. So we've obviously got a yellow figure, we've obviously got a blue figure, figure. And just like I've said 100 times over with the skeletons, I really, really love figures that have kind of outlandish color schemes on their actual bodies, on this, well, not skin for the skeletons, on their bones, but these guys on their actual flesh. And I think it works really well. It does, of course, make them stand out in the line. And then, of course, we do have all of these stripes that are on there. So, you know, AZHAR's got kind of a more tiger stripe-ish, sort of, not necessarily, while ZAZHAR has kind of a more mystic type of look with the kind of swirls that are all over him. And then, of course, we have some that run through the back. It's not a lot. They mostly start on the back at the traps and then they work their way around, but they have a lot of shading back there. ZAZHAR in particular is a bit easier to see because it's a darker blue, whereas AZHAR over here has just a different shade of yellowy, kind of orange hue almost, which actually runs up into the head. But I really, really dig everything about their color scheme. I think that's really what makes them, you know, either love them or hate them kind of thing, because they are so different, but they go so well together, but at the same time, they do definitely stand out amongst other Mythic Legions figures. Of course, we do have to talk about these heads because they are definitely among the defining characteristics for these figures. Outside of the fact that they are both bright and vibrant and outlandish colors to begin with, they have the most unique head sculpts as far as I'm concerned in this line, just because they are, again, quite different from things. So they have the same head sculpt. There's no difference here. It's just a paint thing. So we've got AZHAR with the yellow head, ZAZHAR with the blue head, and then they've got shading that runs around. So he's got the same kind of shading that's on his body, the darker blue, and then AZHAR has a little bit more saturated shading to give you a bit of a, you know, kind of a skull cap on him almost, where he has a bit of an orange hue, and then they both have darker ears, and they've got all of that striping that runs up their horns. But of course, they do have painted eyes, and they match their tunics almost down there. And we've got kind of orangey eyes, and we've got kind of green eyes. So I think those work really, really well. You've got more of the line work and the sculpted lines on the back of the head, and more of that paint detail. And then on AZHAR, you've got a little bit more shading as well, just to kind of bring out some of that sculpt a little better, because some of it is kind of lost with the bright yellow, so not so much on the blue. So they do have very unique head sculpts, and I think they just, you know, they stand out very well, not to mention the fact that they are just immaculately sculpted and just cool designs to begin with. I mean, I don't see how people can't not like these. Now, as far as accessories goes, these guys are, as with most of the 1.0 figures, a little on the basic side, because that's just kind of how things were at that time. They do both come with the straps, so you've got one of each with them. They, of course, come with pauldrons as well, so to kind of beef them up a bit and to change them from being just a bare-chested figure, you can put the pauldrons on each one of these. So we've got AZHAR's here, and they match his armor, so they're that kind of cobalt blue color with the gold inlay. We see these a lot now. They're all over the place in this line. And then ZAZHAR has the corresponding pauldrons that go with his gauntlets, and they still kind of match the shin guards as well, and they're done up in the purple color with the black wash on them. So you can, these are those figures where, again, I don't think you necessarily need them. I think they look really, really good without the pauldrons, but I think at the same time they still look really good with them. I think ZAZHAR kind of does a little better with his than AZHAR. I think they just make him look a little more evil, which is really what it comes down to. Now, as far as actual accessories go, actual weaponry and such, they have a kind of basic assortment. So we have got the same set for each one. They're just a different color scheme. So we'll start with AZHAR here. He has all black accessories, which I don't know if this is too common. I'm pretty sure these are rather uncommon in this line that I can think of off the top of my head. So he's got the spear. It's that standard spear. We've got the standard sword. These are all just black. There is no additional paint embellishment on these. So it's black sword. And then we've got the black dagger. So you can arm him with a pretty good array of things. And then for ZAZHAR, we have got a silver-tipped spear with a gold actual handle, actual staff. And then for the sword, he's got a silver blade with a gold handle and hilt, and then the same for the dagger. So again, the same accessories, just different color scheme to kind of differentiate them a little bit more. Again, kind of on the basic side, just because that's how things were, but they do have a pretty decent array, all things considered. And since I mentioned her, here is really quickly a comparison shot between our, twin demons and the Zarya figures. I've already looked at her before, so you can see that they are absolutely related. Her bio even references these two, so they are related. related. They kind of come from the same realm, and you can see there's a lot of the same design aesthetics going on. It's just a different figure because she's a female, so she does have a few changes, but she has the horns, obviously. Hers are a different style of horn. They have similar armor going on. They've got the hooves. They've all got the hooves, and then they've got the line work on their bodies and different color eyes to their skin tone. So I think they go really well together. But these guys on their own, they definitely make a perfect pairing. So overall, this was an instance where I kind of have some toys. They're cool. I want to talk about them, even though you really can't easily get a hold of them for quote-unquote cheap or decent prices even these days, but I just couldn't resist it. I had to take a look at these guys a little more in depth, and honestly, they are everything I wanted them to be. I've always enjoyed the look of these figures, even long before I had them. I've really been a fan of this particular design. I'm hopeful that the Horsemen make more of these guys down the road, or something a little different, something similar but not necessarily the same, kind of like we got with the Zarya figure. But I just think there's a fantastic design aesthetic going on here. I love the dueling nature of these figures. I love the color choices. I love the subtle differences in armor. And that's really all I wanted. And they exceeded my expectations, even though I ultimately really knew what I was already getting a hold of here. So that's going to do it for this look at the Mythic Legions AZHAR and ZAZHAR figures. Let me know what you guys think. Feel free to like, comment, subscribe, and share. And until next time.